Hey, everybody. Hey, it's great to see you. Hey, it is actually awesome to see you. In fact, welcome to Manny Monday, where I think we have a really good one for you today in store, and we're really looking forward to it today. So, what are we doing this evening? Well, this evening we are doing a deep dive, not the deepest dive that we could ever do, but we are doing a deeper dive than ever before into the Voskerichian shooting. Of course, the Queen's DA tapes have come out, and we have this unbelievable 20-minute audio tape of one of the witness, actually one of the best witnesses to the Boscarichian murder, the one quoted in The Ultimate Evil, in fact. So today we're going to do quite a lot. We're going to really lay a foundation. We're going to see what Maury wrote about the case. We're going to see what the police wrote about the case. We're going to hear the audio tape. We're going to take a look at some of the police reports. It's going to be a great show for you guys. And we got a guest who's going to share the co-hosting duties with me today. And we're having some technical issues before the broadcast, so hopefully it's all working. John Catalano. And John is a friend of the show, a gentleman who made himself known to me last year, a very friendly guy, very helpful guy. And we've been in touch this whole time. And I'm really happy to have him on the show because this is the first time where we're kind of doing this, where, you know, a listener of the show is joining me. And I am very happy because this is what I enjoy. I enjoy the conversation. I enjoy the exchange of ideas. Do I agree with John on everything? Probably not. I'm sure that him and I don't see eye to eye on everything. And you know what? That's just fine. But John's a great guy, and we're really looking forward to having him on the show. So without further ado, may I present to you guys the one, the only John Catalano. How are you, John? Is your mic working?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me, Manny.
Hey, and John, guess what? It's looking like your voice is matching your audio. So your video is matching your audio. We were having some technical issues before. This is a little inside baseball, but everything looks like it's working. So John, thanks so much. And John, before we get into it, since this is the first time you've ever been on the show, I actually just kind of wanted you to introduce yourself to the audience. You're an interesting cat, and they should know who you are, how you came to Son of Sam, how long you've been into this, you know, and essentially kind of like, you know, where I want to take the temperature of everybody, where you're at, where you came from, and where you're at now, given all the new information. And take your time, my friend. The audience really wants to hear from you.
Yes, well, I was a little late to the party. I started reading The Ultimate Evil back in '95, but I grew up in Brooklyn, and my childhood playground was the site of the Moskowitz Violante shooting.
Really?
And yes.
Did you know about it? Did you know about it, or you just played there?
I was actually 9 or 10 years old that night, and I was 3 blocks away.
Did you hear the gunshots?
We did not hear the gunshots. However, I have told the story where we were at a block party at my grandmother's block, which was 3 blocks before the park. And at some point, my family and other people at the block party actually saw a suspicious looking guy. And as you remember, Son of Sam fear was in the air.
Massive.
So everybody was suspicious of people. And eventually this man who crashed the block party by himself started to realize people were wondering who he was and left. And as the story goes, he left in a yellow Volkswagen.
Oh my God.
3 hours later, Stacy Moskowitz was killed. So
that's really amazing. And you got to wonder, like, did the story of the yellow Volkswagen, did that just morph over the years into that, or was that being told like right away?
Well, it's funny because I recently polled my family members that were there with me. And half of them think it was a yellow Volkswagen. The other half think it was the Ford Galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
Half of them think it's Berkowitz, and half of them think it was another guy. So, such is the Son of Sam case. Right?
Exactly. It sounds just like a cross section of the entire Son of Sam world. So yeah, and as you said so aptly the other day on our show, you were like, 45 years later, and we still don't have any answers. And of course, Moskowitz is something that is a shooting that Mike Lorenzo and I are actually going to get heavily into. We're studying the police reports now, and we are planning on heading out to the scene very within the next week or two to do another walk and talk, strictly forensic analysis, fact checking Maury, and doing the walk from the hydrant to the shooting site and timing it with a stopwatch. So we're going to be doing all that, and we're going to also be showing the sites of the other witnesses. So it should be pretty interesting. But so John, so listen, man, I know that you get a lot of crap in your own way from people in the Son of Sam community, just like I do. But
Yeah.
where are you at? Like, what? So tell me where you were last year. Because we've been doing this for a year and a half, and of course, like everyone who was into this, I was a massive Maury Terry fan, massive Ultimate Evil fan. I can't speak for you, but I'm kind of curious as to where you're at in your Son of Sam journey, to use that word.
So quite frankly, up until the recent release of the interviews, I was almost 100% all in Ultimate Evil.
Mm-hmm.
And quite honestly, it took 45 years for me to find out that Tommy Zano in 79 thought it was Berkowitz. Violante also told him he thought it was Berkowitz, and he thought the guy in the park was Berkowitz.
Mm-hmm.
Donna DeMasi thought it was Berkowitz. Joanne Lamino thought it was Berkowitz. Sal Lupo described Berkowitz trying to stick a gun in a hole in the car and shoot again.
Oh my God.
So I kind of feel like Maury Terry put out the book in 87 or 88.
Mm-hmm.
Am I right?
87.
Yeah, he obviously had access to all these interviews, and he obviously disregarded all of that information and put out his own bias, which I'm not saying he did it for a suspicious reason, but he was locked into his theory,
right?
And anything that wasn't congruent was going to get disregarded. And quite honestly, I think we learned a lot from these released interviews.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with you. Now, that I've been off of the Ultimate Evil for longer than you have. Mainly because, just walking around Yonkers, John, you just get this weird sense of this weird feeling and vibe like Maury lied. None of these people around here remember anything like this guy said. Nobody remembers some cult in Untermeyer Park. Everybody's kind of scratching their head wondering, what did I miss something? I was in the park all the time. I never saw these people. And so, that little bit of cognitive dissonance opened up the door for me. And for me, it was the Nettos, of course, that changed everything. And but yeah, like you, I mean, as soon as we started getting these Queens DA things, I had already, of course, been off the train. But yeah, I completely got off the train, and now I want to derail the train because I feel like a historical wrong was done and that we now have to fix. Now, I'm not saying that you have to do that. I'm not saying that you want to do that. I'm talking for me and myself only. But it's certainly been a fun journey, that's for sure.
It has. And in fairness, Manny.
Yes, sir.
I think where I'm at is there's a lot of mysterious stuff about the Brooklyn shooting.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of stuff that's unclear about the Christine Freund shooting. And Carl's shooting, I have no idea what happened.
Yeah,
There's just not a lot of information there.
Yeah.
So,
those police reports tell us nothing.
Yeah, so we're going to assume that, the story is status quo there.
Correct.
But as far as the Berkowitz only doing the Bronx shootings, to me, I just can't go along with it no more.
I can't go.
My personal opinion. So.
I should just take what you said and just have it sampled. I can't go along with it no more. That would have been perfect, just to have a little button that says that. But so John, so thanks. I mean, this is amazing stuff that, we're all kind of doing this together in real time and sort of having this conversation. And And it's something that I'm very proud to be a part of because, you know, I'm obsessed with this case. And I think that you're a fellow son of Sam Head. And it's just great that we are able to take to you know, gather all this information, analyze it in our lifetimes, and be able to come up with conclusions. And so we're very happy. So of course today is all about, not about Brooklyn, but about one of the Queens shootings. And we're going to be talking today about the Voskerichian shooting. So I prepared a little PowerPoint for you guys today, and as I like to do, to keep things very, very organized and on point. And so, John, the general gist of how this is going to go is whenever you want to say something, you just cut my ass off and say it. Okay, don't worry about it. Just because I'm into this, and I kind of like have tunnel vision when I go. But please respond to anything that you need to.
Okay.
So basically, oh, whoops, we're in the wrong spot. You guys are seeing kind of where I'm at with that. Did Maury selectively edit? Okay, so today we're talking about Mr. Barlow, David Berkowitz, and Virginia Voskerichian. And of course, I misspelled this like an idiot. That's my mistake. So I thought that the way that we should set this up for the audience, John, is to, well, show a letter that Berkowitz wrote the morning of the shooting of Virginia Voskerichian. And of course, this letter was found in his treasure trove of letters that were in his apartment that came to us last year, but were also released in the Queens report as well. And of course, this is part of a longer letter from 3877. But this is the part that I think is well, my new favorite word is the nut meat. All day long, the devil dog has been yelling in pain. There is no ceasing. I beg the Wicker Street cult to leave me alone. I am their slave. Today the demon has not stopped for a moment. How much blood does he want me to spill for him? 3877, 9:15 in the morning. And less than 10 hours later, Virginia Voskerichian was lying on a cold New York City street, dead of a gunshot wound, point blank in the face. So, you know, I kind of thought that this would set the tone. So, of course, Virginia Voskerichian was an immigrant from Russia. I believe she was first generation. Her parents immigrated from Russia, and she was a Columbia University student, I believe, in Russian language studies. And I know that a lot of people, John, use that because Maury brought in Columbia University into this conspiracy. So the whole thing was like, yeah, she was Russian, and that was somehow significant. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, there were rumors of a prostitution ring ran by the cult, and they preferred Columbia students. If you remember, I don't know if you remember that.
Right, exactly. Now, how Maury got Virginia Voskerichian, someone said, wasn't she Armenian? She could have been. Oh, that's Eric. She could have been. I figured she was Russian. I think she was a Russian actually. Yeah, how Maury got her involved in a prostitution ring. Of course, he never really proved any of that stuff or even took it any further than just making the innuendo in his book. But no, she was a student at Columbia University, and she was on her way home from school one evening at 7:30, getting off the bus and walking to her home in Queens. I believe she lived near the Forest Hills sections of Queens, and almost right around the corner from where Christine Freund was shot, John.
Correct.
Right. Yes. And you know, that's interesting in and of itself because the Bronx shootings were right around the corner from one another too. Buer Avenue and the Hutchinson River Parkway are literally right around the corner from one another. So it's like the same MO in a sense. But what this shooting changed one of the MOs, and that was, of course, the time of the shooting. This was at 7:30 in the evening. Right.
7:30. And she was also the only person that was shot while being by herself.
Correct.
Single shooter.
Correct. And she wasn't in a car, but of course neither were Lomino and Demasi. But her, Lomino, Demasi were the only ones shot not in cars. And that's another thing that I was trying to show in the beginning of my video series, that even if you believed in the cult thesis, this whole thing about lovers' lanes was crap, because quite a few of these shootings did not take place in lovers' lanes. So Virginia Voskerichian, yes, she was pretty, as Moet says, "Hey Moet, how you doing? R.I.P." And of course, thank you to everybody out there in the crowd watching, everybody in the chat. We got quite a bit to do today, so I wasn't able to say hello to everybody individually, but you all have my great appreciation. And of course, this is unfortunately probably an hour after her shooting, and it's a very insensitive picture. I understand, but it is the only picture of her crime scene that was ever made public. And you can see she was walking just on a normal city street in front of a nice, what looks like a nice, Art Deco style building, English Tudor style building, I should say. And here she is lying down with her boots. And it was a very sad case. So here's how Maury portrayed the story of Virginia's murder. And we're just going to read it because what I like to do, John, and also for the audience is, lay a foundation, because we have a lot of things we're going to be learning today. So it's good to get all of the information that we possibly can. So, of course, Maury's narrative comes from The Ultimate Evil, straight up from The Ultimate Evil. At 7:00 in the evening on March 8th, the thermometer still hovered at a balmy 52 degrees as 18-year-old Amy Johnson left her Forest Hills homes on Exeter Street for a customary night jog in the company of her 13-year-old brother, Tony. Beginning her run less than 4 blocks from the scene of the Christine Freund murder, she traveled west to 69th Avenue, turned left, and continued south to the next block, Fleet Street. Turning east on Fleet, she and Tony trotted to the corner of busy Continental Avenue, where they again veered left, following a rectangular route back to their home. Here's where it starts to get interesting for our purposes. As Amy jogged north on Continental to the corner of Dartmouth, the image of the Freund homicide formed in her mind, and she involuntarily glanced across Station Plaza, where the murder occurred 5 weeks before. Especially wary of strangers since that night, Amy looked back to her left and saw a young man standing by a small play area at the corner of Continental and Dartmouth. Now, as he stared at the approaching Amy, his eyes studied her in what she termed as an eerie, threatening manner, and she became alarmed. He had wavy, dark hair combed straight back, and his hands were jammed into his pocket of the beige 3/4 length raincoat he was wearing. He stood about 6 feet tall and weighed approximately 175 pounds. So quickly, John, so that sounds like Berkowitz to me, sort of. Dark hair, combed straight back. I mean, sort of. Did he own a...
Yeah, ironically, all the descriptions, they never say 200. He looked more like a 200-pound guy to me. Am I wrong about that?
Yeah, you're right. But, we only saw pictures of him at his arrest.
Right.
Who knows what he looked like 5 months before.
I mean, literally every description of every shooting, it's always like 170, 180.
Right.
Unless maybe that's what he was,
Right. But, I think one of the things, though, I wonder is how, just like eyewitness sketches, right? Like, how accurate can we really deem someone's weight to be? So, especially if they're running, in the dark. It was November, so it was dark. I'm not saying that he wasn't 175 or was. It's just sometimes I think people put too much emphasis on eyewitness descriptions. When we all are so fallible, and it's so easy not, to miss things. Unknown to Amy, the same man was loitering in the area before her arrival. He'd frightened another young girl, Peg Benson, just minutes earlier. Now, as he glared at Amy, she shivered and quickened her pace, passing him and turning east onto Dartmouth Street. Off the sidewalk, she kept to the middle of the narrow road and gestured to her younger brother to do the same. Together, they maintained a hurried gait down Dartmouth Street, which was linked with Tudor-style and stucco buildings and dimly lit by turn-of-the-century style street lamps. When Amy and Tony reached Tennis Place near the stadium, they swung left and aimed towards Exeter Street, their own block. They would be home in a few moments. Incredibly, at the corner of Exeter and 70th, she again spied the same man standing on the sidewalk, and again he was staring at her. How did he get there, she wondered. Although she'd been running all the while, he somehow managed to get in front of her and was waiting for her to pass. Right. Did he drive, or had someone driven him ahead of her? So this is interesting, right? Because, Maury is setting up in these passages for us the distinct possibility that two people were there. Right, John?
Two people there, or at some point, this man in the raincoat maybe got into a vehicle and traveled ahead of them.
Right, maybe to follow them, because he Berkowitz himself said that he would eye victims and then like look around and go around the neighborhood and make sure everything was hunky dory. So maybe that's what we're seeing here, or maybe not.
Yeah, so Berkowitz actually said he roamed the area for an hour and a half that night prior to the shooting.
Right.
If we can believe. Yeah.
Right, exactly, and we will be reading his confession as well, in addition to this as well, because we're trying to get all of it, and of course we're going to be hearing the tape. Now, very frightened, she and her brother ran even faster. They scurried past the man, who made no movement, and safely reached the front of their home. Catching her breath, Amy looked around and saw that the stranger was walking away, heading east on Exeter towards Tennis Place in Dartmouth. It was 7:25 p.m. So now here's Voskerichian coming out. We're going to skip a lot of the bio stuff. We're just going to get to this here. Okay. As she neared 4 Dartmouth Street, an apartment house, Virginia noticed a short, youngish-looking figure in a watch cap and sweater approaching her from the opposite direction. As Virginia and the youth closed within 5 feet of each other, she moved slightly to her right to allow the stranger to pass on her left side. Then, for the briefest of moments, everything froze. Realizing at the end of her life was in mortal danger, Virginia cried out as she saw the gun pointing into her face. Desperately, she ducked and frantically raised the school books to her face to ward off the coming attack. When the killer fired, the bullet ripped through the textbooks and entered Virginia's head on the left side of her upper lip, knocked out several teeth, tore through her skull, and lodged in the base of her neck, cracking vertebrae. Slain instantly by the .44 slug, Virginia pitched sideways and into the row of hedges fronting 4 Dartmouth. Now, this is important, everybody, what's coming up, because this is where the witness comes into play, and we're going to hear this witness today. So if you haven't paid attention yet, you should start paying attention now. Down Dartmouth Street, back in the direction from which he'd come, the killer ran. At the corner of Dartmouth and Tennis Place, the gunman pulled the watch cap over his face as he hurtled by a startled Ed Marlowe, which is going to be our Mr. Barlow today, a 59-year-old civil engineer. "Oh, Jesus," the killer exclaimed, covering his youthful features with the cap. But Marlowe had seen the face, if only briefly. The person looked to be only about 16 to 18 years of age, was stockily built, clean-shaven, and wore a ski jacket or sweater and a cap, which was either brown or blue and striped. He appeared to be about 5'7". So, John, now this is, of course, a very different description of David. This is the person that Marlowe says here. Well, according to Maury Terry, that Marlowe said, because again, we're getting this filtered through Maury Terry here. We have to always be cognizant of that. 16 to 18 years, stocky, clean shaven, and 5'7", which is nothing like Berkowitz. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, as we listen to him on the tape, he actually corrects himself. He says, I originally thought he was 18. He said he looked kind of young. He didn't have a tie on or a business suit. So I misinterpreted him as a younger guy. He actually corrects himself in that
he
sense.
Corrects himself, right? Okay, so yeah, and we're gonna get to that, and in fact, he not only corrects himself in the tape, as we're gonna see, he actually corrects the police. So this is actually quite interesting that this passage right here might have been based on erroneous interpretation, or a witness who then changed his story. But this was in the book and it influenced me, John. This passage,
I thought it was strange that his description wasn't in the police report. I know a lot of them are like summaries. They're not very thorough. But a lot of them will have a description, even a description box. And
right. Well,
and there was nothing on his. And we know he gave a description because he went to the police department that night and did a sketch. So
right,
he
and
obviously gave them a description. Yeah.
Right, and we're gonna and he talks about that description. Don't let the cat out of the bag, but he talks about that description in his tape as well. But these are the two relevant, most relevant police reports vis-a-vis our story tonight, because this is the first police report, just talking about the description at the scene. So this gives us basic facts that we can then refer to. Okay. The assigned in company with Detective Simon responded to 4 Dartmouth Street, near hedges and legs facing east along sidewalk. Lying alongside body were several books around her arm and a pocketbook. Deceased was dressed in a tan check jacket, brown scarf, black blouse, black skirt, brown gloves, tan boots, brown and tan knee-high socks, yellow metal wristwatch, and left wrist. Deceased had gunshot wound of mouth causing teeth to shatter. Okay, so now this is interesting because the police are saying that the gunshot was in the mouth. Okay, teeth shattering. Okay, let's remember that, folks. Okay, when we hear the tape. Here's the statement of Mr. Barlow, the gentleman who we're going to hear tonight in greater detail. A 20-minute tape of him taken in 1979. This is his statement in 1977, the night of the murder. On this date, the undersigned interviewed the subject in front of his residence. He states that he is employed with an engineering firm, so civil engineer, just like Maury said, and had been in Atlantic City on business earlier that day. He states that he returned home at 1930 hours. That's 7:30 for those of you guys who don't know military time. He parked his car on Dartmouth Street and was walking east towards his residence. He heard what he thought was a firecracker and looked up towards 71st Avenue. At this time, he saw a male, white, 16 to 18 years of age. So Maury was using this as his basis, okay, clearly. Stocky build, there's the stocky, wearing a dark sweater and a dark stocking hat with a stripe. When the youth passed Mr. Barlow, he shouted, "Oh, Jesus." Mr. Barlow states that because he was walking in a lighted area, he did not pay much attention to the youth and did not see where he went after he passed him. So clearly from this, Barlow didn't even know that somebody had been shot. He just heard firecrackers and saw someone running by him. Correct, John?
It's not until he actually walked to her body that he realized what he was seeing.
Right.
You know, he well, I don't want to spoil it, but
yeah,
he saw a struggle. He heard firecrackers, but he didn't actually, like you said, he didn't actually realize a murder had occurred until he walked down to the body.
Exactly. And now here's my question, which I just want to do a little aside on, because I've been hot on this Maury selectively editing stuff. We already saw how he took out one letter out of 100 other raving maniacal letters, and he took one letter to prove his point that there was a cult involved with David Berkowitz, when David Berkowitz was just talking about the Wicker Street cult, this crazy shit in his own head. So I thought to myself, well, did Maury selectively edit out these police reports in order to get his narrative? Because he talked about only the jogger in his book, right? And this weird story about the jogger seeing a man before and then running and then seeing the same man after, leading me to believe, and I'm only speaking for myself, that there was definitely Berkowitz was out there with 2 people. That's what the narrative that I was getting from that. So one of the things I noticed real quick, and let me just quickly get these up real fast. I went to the Voskerichian police reports, John, in the Queens DA dump. And hell, man, you know what I noticed? They're 574 pages. Okay. So, of course, my inquiring mind then realized, whoa, there's like 1 million eyewitness reports here. Okay. And we're not going to go through them all. This is for you guys at home if you want to do this on your own. And this would make a good assignment. There's 1 million reports here. Okay. How come he only chose that one report, which I haven't been able to find yet? I'm sure it's in here somewhere. But he only used one report to prove his thesis. Why didn't he use the rest of these 550 others? Because I read some of these. Many of these talk about the guy in the brown jacket. Some of them talk about the guy in the brown jacket. None of them mention a stocky, chubby teenager. None of them mention 2 people. None of them mention about seeing the same guy moving. So what I'm thinking, John, and of course I'm not asking you to agree with me. That's not what this is about. I'm just putting I'm just putting this out there. I think Maury pulled another one of his selective editing things and just took what he want. I mean, look at this. I'm scrolling down. I'm not even 1/10 of the way down. And look at all this stuff.
I haven't had a chance to dig into those. Are there any reports from people that say they also saw the shooting?
I didn't
That's
see
pretty
that,
interesting.
but I saw other reports of people who saw the guy with the brown jacket
The brown
hanging,
raincoat.
the brown raincoat
Okay.
hanging around. And so why didn't Maury use those in his book, right? Which would have only shown that Berkowitz was there alone. What I'm putting out there and I'm positing right here, and I'm actually going to make the accusation, and I'm not putting John into this because I'm not speaking for John here. And John could think I'm full of shit. And you know what? That's okay. But I am putting out a thesis here that Maury selectively edited and fished. Nikozmas put it better than I ever could. Maury is fishing for what's fitting in here. I mean, 74 pages. I mean, he could have used a little bit more information than just one other eyewitness, in my
Well,
opinion.
well, I've said it. I'll say it again. He was locked into his thesis. I don't know that he had bad intentions, man. People that know him say he was obsessed and he was very stubborn and thick-headed. But he was obviously locked into his thesis, and he basically disregarded stuff that wasn't, in sync with his theory.
Absolutely.
Apparently,
Yeah.
I'd imagine other authors probably do that as well. I mean,
Oh,
I
totally.
guess, at the end of the day, you have to sell your book and it
Right.
has to make sense. But
he had a narrative to craft, and to me, the narrative was more important than the truth, in my opinion. Speaking about him, all media is narrative. Everybody's trying to sell you their own version of events, but to do it so egregiously like that, to so nakedly manipulate, he never thought we were going to come around to check on him and to find all this stuff. I guarantee you, he never thought that this day would come. So let's get into the next part of this, laying the foundation, John, before we get into the tape, and that's Berkowitz's confession. Okay. Because all right. So we've learned two things so far. We've read what Maury wrote, the joggers, right? He chose the jogger report and Mr. Barlow. We've seen the fact that there were 574 pages in the police report. Okay. And so I put out that question: did Maury fish for stuff? Now let's look at Berkowitz's confession and let's see what he says. Now, on March 8th, 77, did you go back to that area? Yes. Do you recall what time that was? Early in the evening. Any reason why you went to that location that day? I had my assignment there. Who gave you your assignment? Sam. What night of the week was it? Hey, John, you want to be the questioner. I'll be the answer.
I don't know if I'm going to be able to see it.
It's too small.
My screen is small.
Okay, if you can't, don't worry about it. I'll do it. What night of the week was it? It was a Tuesday night. Unless you feel you can, John. If you can, just chime in. And how did you get to that location? By car. Same car. And what bridge did you use? I don't remember. And how did you get into the Forest Hills area? What road did you use? Queens Boulevard, and I turned off on one of the side streets. Where did you park your car that night? Adjacent to the Long Island Railroad, by the tennis courses there. Was there any meter parking there? Just regular private parking. And can you describe, incidentally, what time was it? 7 or 7:30? What happened that night when you were in the area? Just walked around all night. How long were you walking around? Maybe an hour and a half. So John, there it goes to what you were saying before in his confession. He was walking around the entire area. It wouldn't have been unbelievable for someone to see him twice.
Right. He's a bit of a stalker.
Right. And he was, and despite what people think about him, he was not a schlubby, unathletic person. In my opinion, that guy could run. He talks in his psychiatrist letters about how he would walk and bike for miles and miles. So he had a core strength, I'm sure, that enabled him to walk faster than the normal person. All right. And then what happened? I saw Miss Voskerichian and I had to shoot her. She was coming up. We was walking in opposite directions. And what side of the street was she on? The side by the apartment buildings. And were you on the same side or the opposite side? Same side. And when you saw her, what did you do? I pulled out the gun from my pocket and fired one shot into her face. And then what did you do after that? I turned around and ran towards my car. Do you recall what she looked like? Vaguely. Could you tell us, please? Well, she had a long, pretty face. There was a shadow effect, long, wavy hair. Had you ever seen her before? No. And this was similar to the other incidents. You picked her out at random? Yes. Is there any other reason? Sam told me to pick her. Now, in relation again, they're just like not paying any attention when he says Sam. They're just like, okay, let's move on. Now, in relation again, showing you this map, you see where the tennis courts are at the top. Where were you parked in relation to the tennis courts? Adjacent to the tennis courts, the same street as the railroad. Do you see Dartmouth Street? Is that where you saw Miss Voskerichian? Yes, towards the tennis courts. Did you have to cut towards the railroad where your car was parked? Yes. Now, after you shot her and to the point that you got to your car, did you see anyone? Okay, everybody, pay attention. Yes, there was an elderly man walking. I ran by him. So first, the things first, John, real quick. The fact that he remembered that I don't think that was in the newspapers, shows that he was at the scene, right? Because he did run by an elderly man. An elderly man did see him run by him.
That's correct.
I ran by him. Did you happen to see anyone jogging in the area? There's that question. No, I did not. Now, can you describe the elderly man that you saw on that night? I don't remember his face, just his dark clothing. I think he was wearing a hat. And where was he in relation to Dartmouth Street, or was he closer to your car? Dartmouth Street, the street near the tennis courts. Did anyone say anything at that time? I said something to him. What did you say? I said, "Hi, mister." Okay, now, John, this is Maury used this to prove the cult thesis, remember?
Yeah, so Barlow said he had said, "Oh Jesus," or Jesus, and
right.
he said, "Hi, mister." But yeah.
Now, when you kind of put it in context, you could easily see Berkowitz just like, I said, "Hi, miss." Like, how's he going to remember what he said? He just shot someone. He's not going to remember between "Hi, mister" and "Oh Jesus." I mean, I could see that mistake being made very easily. I mean, I don't know about you, John, but I could see it.
I was wondering if he was being sarcastic. Like, what did you say to him? "Hi, mister." You know, like, what did I say to him? Like,
right. Good point. Good point. He could have been sarcastic because we don't get context from this. We don't hear his actual voice. Excellent point, John. I never thought of that. And but I don't think that this is Maury used this. He said that he got the confession wrong. He really said, "Oh Jesus," but then he confessed to "Hi, mister," right? Yeah. Therefore, the process was involved. I mean, that's the logical leap that these people take. Okay, let's carry on. And do you and do you recall what, if any, type of hat he had on? Can you describe the hat? Just a hat, a dress hat, I think. And what were you wearing on that occasion? I think my ski jacket, dungarees. Were you wearing a hat? A watch cap. So he said he was wearing a watch cap. Now, he could have read that in the papers, so it doesn't necessarily mean anything to me. And what type of hat was that? A brown watch cap. And what was that in your duffel bag that was taken by the police today? Yes. Do you remember the type of evening it was? The weather conditions? Cold. Now, Maury said it was 52 degrees, which isn't that cold, but still cold, cool, cold, sort of. And how did you leave that particular area that night? I just drove off. Do you recall how you drove off? I went down Queens Boulevard pretty far, almost to the end. And after that, I went over one of the bridges, Triborough. I don't remember. So he can't remember what bridge he went over, right? But he's supposed to remember what he said to the guy passing him running after he just shot someone. I mean, he clearly doesn't remember the fine details of this, which is, in my opinion, okay, right? He remembered the main ones. Is there any reason why you pick Queens? A lot of pretty women there. Is there any reason why the women are prettier in Queens than in any of the other locations? Imagine he said, "It must be the water they drink." That would have been great. That would have been great if he had said that. Just seemed that way. Was that the only occasion that you wore a hat? Yes. Was there any reason in this particular incident why you only fired one shot at that time? That's all I needed. In other words, you knew you hit her. Wow. Yes. That's pretty messed up. Was it your plan and intent to kill her on that occasion? Yes. And did you know her before that? No. Can you describe what she was wearing and doing at the time? She was just walking home from school. She had a long coat and boots. She was carrying her books. So he assumed she was walking from school because he saw her books, because some people could look at that and go, he knew she was just coming from school. He was part of the Columbia prostitution ring. He knew it. I know. He knew she was there. How far away from her when you fired? About 2 feet. Did she do anything prior to you firing the shot? She screamed slightly, and I believe she tried to raise the books, which is in the police report. So he knew a very stark detail. Towards the direction of the shot? Yes. And do you know where you hit her? Somewhere in the face. I couldn't tell. All right. So that's pretty raw. Okay.
Manny,
Yes, sir.
do we know for sure if the he shot her through the book? Because that's the story that we all know. I mean,
Actually,
have you ever seen a picture of the book or anything in the police report?
That's a great question, because I was actually thinking the same exact thing, John. Like the shooting through the book actually seems weird, because wouldn't it deflect the bullet?
I'm not sure about that, but I always assumed that it was right, because it would be like a defensive, if someone pull a gun out on you, you try to, put something between you.
Right,
So,
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't say that there were holes in the books in the police report, just so that the books were lying next to her. Right? So I wonder, like, really, if a lot of these, like, what got lost in translation here, what is myth, what is, to me, it always seemed weird that a 44, which does not have the highest velocity. I don't know much about firearms, but I've learned enough to know that a 44 is a pretty slow bullet, pretty heavy and large bullet. I think if it's going to go through a stack of books, it's going to be deflected. But then again, maybe if there's a cop in the audience or a firearm expert, ammunition expert in the audience, please chime in and maybe call in a little later. So, John, any thoughts? Because we're about to hit the tape, because this is the pièce de résistance. We got to listen to what this guy said. Any thoughts on what we've just kind of discussed?
You know what? I'd like to get into the tape, because I have a lot more opinions on stuff that he's going to talk about.
Well,
so
it's your time, my man, because we have the tape. And what I've done, guys, is I took the Barlow tape. Okay, I just want to let everyone know, for full disclosure, that I have taken the Barlow tape and I put it through an audio filter to remove the low end rumble and the high end hiss. I have not edited the audio in any way, shape, or form, other than to clean it up and bump the gain a little bit. I've compressed it to just make it easy for you guys to hear. So we're going to do what we always do, which is just play it. And John, when I have something to say, I'm going to stop it. And when you have something to say, just yell out and say, stop. Okay?
Yes.
Got it. Perfect. All right, let's hit it.
Called me about Berkowitz.
Basically, it's the same thing that we started to discuss when I spoke to you earlier. Mr. Barlow.
I just want to put out there in the audience too, guys, if it's too loud, because I don't have any way to monitor this on my end, please let us know in the chat if it's too loud or too low. Thank you.
Mainly what I'm interested in is the incident involving the Virginia girl.
Sure.
And that, as you recall, was on March 8, 1977.
Yep.
And I was wondering if you could tell me, starting from about that time. Now, the incident occurred, we believe, at approximately 7:30 in the evening.
Yeah.
And if you could tell me at approximately that time where you were coming from and then what occurred, just as best as you can recall it.
Yeah, to be more precise, it was about 7:40, and I had just come back from Atlantic City on business, and I was reparking my car after a bite to eat, and I came back, and the background in that area is lighted. That is, the light is reflected off a building wall, and I saw a person standing there with his, let us say, his right arm at shoulder level, apparently as if he was holding somebody, a necker or something like that, and I didn't pay too much attention to that. Simultaneously, and this was 80 steps times 3 feet, 240 feet away. I paced it off afterwards.
I just want to say something here. First of all, John, this guy seems very, very
detailed.
Exactly. Extremely detailed. He's talking about pacing. He's talking about all this stuff.
A couple of engineers I know, when they're focused on something, they're exceptionally detailed.
Right.
And as you can see, the parts of this is actually, this whole tape is a 25-second time slice. It's a quick event. He didn't really realize the whole substance until after it happened. But the parts where he's focused, he's 100% convincing and very detailed.
I agree. I was shocked hearing this tape. Let's carry on.
I heard what I thought was firecrackers. Now, having been in Chinatown 2 days before that, on a Sunday during the Chinese New Year's, didn't excite me, you see, because I'd heard a lot of firecrackers. Later on, Berkowitz told the detective that he fired through a plastic bag, and that muffled the sound of the shot. Hence the firecracker sound. It was dimly lit. Of course, the shrubbery at that time was high along all of the sidewalks in Forest Hills, and the lights were dimmer than they are now.
He's accurately describing in the picture of her scene. You see the high privet shrub hedges.
But I observed him running toward me at a high rate of speed, and he passed within the inches of me. But first, when he first saw me, I saw him coming, but he didn't see me for some reason. He wasn't looking for me.
Sorry, John, I keep on stopping this, but I keep on finding things that I find interesting. Notice that he said he ran by at a high rate of speed. Just like like the shooter in Brooklyn.
Yes.
Okay.
He stopped about 3 feet from me and said, "Jesus," just like that. And then, with a resolve and determination to get free, he zoomed past me between the building wall of the apartment house and me on the sidewalk. I could have tripped him, but hell, you don't trip joggers in our neighborhood. Everybody jogs.
What street was that on?
So, Manny.
Yeah.
So obviously, he was standing somewhere where Berkowitz probably didn't see him watch him.
Right. Maybe he was behind the hedge.
I picture him running, and maybe Mr. Barlow was standing a little out from the doorway, and Berkowitz getting startled, almost running into him. And he
Definitely.
said, "Oh, Jesus."
Definitely. And I can see Berkowitz saying,
Mister.
"Oh, Jesus." Yeah. Hi, mister. I can see. Yeah. I could actually see Berkowitz saying, "Oh, Jesus." I could actually picture that in my mind. I don't see him saying, "Hi, mister." You know, like, what's he doing? Like smiling. "Hi, mister." But
Yeah, I could see him being startled and saying,
right.
you know.
Right. And that's what a guy from the Bronx back then would say. "Oh, Jesus." Right. He'd probably still say it to this day. Up here in the Bronx of Brooklyn, you know, it's like a standard thing to say, especially in the 70s. So I'm finding this all very believable. I see no problem with Berkowitz's confession, certainly none that Maury brought up. And of course, I am personally wondering whether he selectively edited the police reports just to fish for his narrative. Anyway, let's.
Just one thing for everybody listening. As of right now, where we are, Mr. Barlow still does not, in my opinion, know that a murder took place.
Okay, in terms of what he's describing, he knows it now, but in terms of where he's describing, he doesn't yet know a murder has taken place. He thought Berkowitz was a jogger. Correct. Okay.
Correct.
Hey, we got book club in the house. Everyone say hello to the great book club. All right.
It was on Dartmouth Street.
That was on Dartmouth.
Yep, Dartmouth and Tennis Place is where he passed me, and that was exactly 240 feet from where I found the girl. I was puzzled by the fact that he was running with both hands on the top of his head, and he was wearing a stocking cap, of all things.
So not only did Berkowitz shoot past him, he had run 240 feet, which shows athleticism.
It's an 80-yard run.
Right.
He passed me right under the street lamp on that corner. Now that's weird because in that day nobody wore a stocking cap, and nobody runs with 2 hands on the top of his head. He confirmed to the detective later that was what he was doing too. I walked then toward the front of the building in which I reside, and I saw further on, what appeared to be somebody had dumped some garbage on the sidewalk, which is peculiar in Forest Hills. And I went down hoping it was not some girl's feet, and sure enough it was. And he had dropped her in the bushes, and I left her there and went in and dialed the 999 number or 919, whatever it is, and that's when I informed the police that there was of the incident, and so that's the story. And it was this guy Berkowitz, and everything that I said, he confirmed to Detective Flanagan, I think it was.
Now, when you first...
So here he is saying that he witnessed Berkowitz. This is straight up. Not
100% positive identification.
not a
As far as I'm
six.
concerned.
He mentions nothing about a 16-year-old or an 18-year-old. He's straight up about it being Berkowitz. All right. Well, again, very interesting to me.
saw him, you say you saw someone like he had his arm out?
Well, he was in the crook of his elbow. He was holding her head, and he fired the pistol in her mouth. And then he...
Man,
Yeah.
so this is what most of the people who don't believe his testimony harp on most. He's actually describing a headlock. So he's saying he had her in the crook of his elbow and he shot her in the face. As if there was some kind of struggle. He first had said he had his hand on her neck, and now he's describing the headlock.
Right.
And this is what the reason most people are saying that he's not a credible witness. They're saying, why would he have her in a headlock? Why would there be a struggle? Which, I don't know. Maybe this time, that's what happened.
I mean, a person is probably going to put up a little bit of a fight, I would imagine. To me, I see nothing wrong with what he just said. And actually, he said that he shot her in the mouth, which is reflected in the police reports because it says that she was shot at close range in the mouth and her teeth were shattered. So he knew this. And
like
he
you said, this was the only shooting that wasn't that didn't take place in a car. The Massey Lamino was sitting on a stoop.
Right.
But I could see someone getting startled and trying to put up a fight, and there might have been a little struggle. I mean, who knows? It's believable to me. He was also looking from 240 feet away. So he could have saw what he interpreted as a struggle or a headlock, and it might have been a shove or who knows.
Right. And I don't even think that his eyewitness account of the shooting matters as much as the eyewitness of the guy who ran past him. Because again, as you say, if he's 250 feet away in the dark, it could have been a tree branch that he saw getting in his way that he thought was an arm going around her as a headlock. So anybody harping on that as to prove that there was a cult involved is a moron.
That seems to be the consensus.
Interesting. That's the first time I ever heard that.
Why he's not credible.
Okay. All right. Well,
he described the headlock and the hand on the neck.
Why am I not surprised, John? Why am I not surprised? All right. I mean, this just passed me by without even a second thought. I didn't think anything of it because, again, my main thing is he was the witness of the guy running away, and seeing something from 250 feet doesn't really. If he got one thing wrong with that, it means nothing to me.
They dropped her in the bushes. Of course, this I did not know. All I know is I saw a guy there holding a girl or holding some object. It was dark. I couldn't tell particularly that it was a girl. Didn't pay particular attention.
Right there, he's saying he didn't really pay too much attention to the incident. He didn't even know what was going on. He stood up and paid notice when the guy ran past him.
And but when he started running toward me, I got a little curious, but I was tempted to trip him, but maybe I should have, but I didn't.
Now, did you at any time see anything in his hand?
No, he was holding both.
So someone just said, did he just say they? He did just say they, but clearly he's talking about one person here. So he's saying they, but he's referring to one person. I can understand someone saying, oh, he said they, but You can use they when you're referring to a single person. They did that. They did that, right? Okay.
Both hands on the top of his head.
Now, when you say a stocking cap, you mean one that looks like a long stocking or a watch cap?
It was a watch cap.
Watch cap.
As a matter of fact, I described it as a watch cap. Very few people know what that means. You must have been in the Navy.
Well, I've seen them a lot.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Aside from the cap, do you recall how he was dressed?
Yeah, he didn't have a jacket on, as I recall it. I believe a white shirt and pants. It was nothing distinguishing him, nothing outstanding that would call your attention. My focus was on the features of his face and why he was holding his hands on top of his head. But he was the guy. Berkowitz was the guy that ran past me, because that's the guy I described to the police photographer. And that's the picture that appeared, the picture of Berkowitz appeared in an earlier newspaper that nobody showed me the picture. And when I finally saw it on August 10th, that was several months after the Forest Hills murder, I immediately wrote to Inspector Dowd and told him, sort of criticized him for no one ever having showed me the photograph, because that more nearly depicted Berkowitz than the rendition that the police artist did of the guy I described.
Okay, now that's confusing to me.
Me too. Is he saying that he's upset he wasn't shown a sketch from a prior shooting that looked like Berkowitz? Or is he saying he wasn't shown Berkowitz's photo after he was arrested?
Yeah,
I'm a little confused.
I'm confused at that, actually. I don't think I can make sense of that, actually. But he's chiding them for somehow. Let's listen more. Maybe they'll put that in context, because that was confusing.
Let me ask you, do you recall what kind of covering he had on his feet? Were they shoes or sneakers or...
Shoes.
He had shoes on.
Yeah.
Do you remember did you notice whether they were of the work boot type or regular low-cut shoes?
Well, I would imagine low cut. Bear in mind at 7:40, you see, it was dark, and he passed me under the light, and he was running from the dark in just... I only saw him as he approached me in the light. That is to say, to be able to distinguish that. But in my judgment, my recollection, he was wearing the ordinary business clothes, let us say. He was not wearing sport clothes or working clothes or anything of that nature.
When you say a white shirt, you mean like a dress shirt with no tie?
Yeah.
That could have been one of Berkowitz's gray shirts, many gray shirts. Now everyone's asking to back it up a little. I'm not going to back it up, because I have a feeling I'm not even going to make sense of it the second time. And we can. This is something that we can listen to and discuss in the comment section.
I've listened a bunch of times, and I can't figure out. You're talking about the sketch versus the photo? I can't
Correct.
figure it out.
I can't figure it out either. I initially thought that what he was trying to mean was that the police put the wrong sketch in the paper, that he wanted this sketch here on the left, which clearly looks like Berkowitz, but they put this one in on the right. But that's not what he said. So I'm confused, basically. Also, the issue with the jacket. What happened to the beige raincoat?
Right.
Now, it was 52. And wait, Dave Moth said, didn't he say was wearing dark clothes in the 77 statement, not a white shirt? Let me go back to the 77 statement and read it. Now, I'm just going to read it quickly on my own, because I don't want to stop the share. It says here, he was wearing a dark sweater and a dark stocking hat. Yes, Dave Moth is correct. Barlow said that he was wearing a dark sweater and a dark stocking hat with a stripe. So he is changing his story there a little bit. Okay, we have to be fair, John. Okay.
Fair enough.
Right, we have to be fair.
That type with the sleeves rolled up or down, if you recall.
That I would not recall.
And the pants, were they denim type or a dungaree
You
type?
couldn't tell. They were not denim nor dungaree type. They were a business suit, however old it may have been, and whatever was denim, dungarees.
Now, at the point that you saw him, he was still on Dartmouth.
Yep.
And just approaching the first intersection.
Yeah, and he ran like hell.
And now, how long would you say you had him on his face under observation? In other words, how long?
Well, for a matter of seconds, for a matter of 10 feet away until he passed me.
Mm-hmm.
But he was running fast, and he was scared, and believe me, and the newspapers all said he walked away from his murders, and I'm the only guy who said he was running scared as hell, and he admitted he was scared. He ran like hell. And he told that to the detectives.
How the hell? Well, two things. One, there's another thing with him saying he ran like hell, which is echoes of Tommy Zano and the Brooklyn shooting of the guy who ran like crazy after the shooting. Okay, but I had another issue here with this. Let me just back up just a second.
Detectives.
Oh yeah, he said that to the detectives. How does this guy know what Berkowitz said to the detectives? That's what I'd like to know. Was he privy to the detective reports? I mean, I know you don't know the answer.
Well, he mentioned the Detective Flanagan, and maybe maybe after the initial arrest, there were articles about each shooting and confessions. I'm not sure. I really don't remember.
But he seems to know an awful lot about what Berkowitz confessed, and I would like to know how he knew that. Anyway, and of course, Book Club brings up a good point. Barlow seems to be adding more details 2 years later, and my description is the description in 77 is more accurate. A fair statement.
And the only words you heard out of his mouth were Jesus.
Yeah. And he saw me, and he knew he had a problem. That was what he was saying. Jesus.
Was there anyone else on the street that you observed?
Not a soul.
Not a soul.
And I couldn't even, the cops didn't come for 45 minutes, so I throw that one in as an implied criticism. Yeah.
And let's see, there'd been a shooting just around the corner.
Yeah, just a few blocks.
Let's see, what was it? The next shooting was Lupo, was just a couple of days. I'm looking for my dates on it. I don't have it in front of me.
You mean the one in Station Square?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was only a few hundred yards away.
Right around the corner.
Yeah, in Station Square.
Right. That was the Freund case. Now, let me ask you, you said you had him under observation for about 10 seconds, and the police arrived about 45 minutes later.
Yeah.
At that point, you gave a description, I assume, of the person that you saw running.
Yep.
Okay, now before we get into his description again, 45 minutes? That's not believable to me.
I was going to say, why did it take them so long to respond? Especially, being that there was a shooting there recently, right?
Exactly. And I believe, no, Son of Sam yet hadn't been, it was the 44 caliber killer at this point still. So there wasn't this media frenzy quite yet. So I could see why
this is the shooting that started the frenzy.
Right, exactly.
Boscarichian shooting. 2 days later, Beam gave the press conference. Right. But
still, I do not see them taking 45 minutes to respond to a shooting of a white female in the middle of Forest Hills. I just don't see that happening. But who knows? I mean, could be wrong. But he is saying some things here, which is making me a little bit suspect. But so far, he seems pretty damn sure about Berkowitz, and that's the only thing in my mind that matters.
And at what point in time did they send someone down, an artist, to do a sketch of?
Well, I went down that night with Detective Flanagan, and also there was a girl ahead of me who lives in the neighborhood who described a guy that she saw, but she saw him 2 or 3 blocks away. I don't know why, unless, I've heard all sorts of, stories about the Manson-type arrangement, but however, the guy I saw was...
Wait a second. What do you mean by that? I've heard all sorts of stories about the Manson-type arrangement.
I think he was referring to the articles about conspiracy. But were those articles being printed in New York City? I thought they were mainly 1979.
I thought they were mainly in the Gannett papers. I mean, I don't know, but interesting, because he is bringing up about this conspiracy. That's the only thing I can think he means by saying the Manson thing. All right, let's carry on.
Berkowitz, the guy she saw, I don't know who it was.
How much of his head was covered by that hat?
How much what?
Of his head was covered by the hat.
Well, I tell you, if you look at, do you have the police photograph by any chance?
I don't have the one with the hat on.
That's this right here.
Let me take a look. I got a Xerox print of it here.
So he's looking right now, I believe, at this sketch right here, the one of the watch cap, because he's asking to see the print of the sketches.
That was the only thing I could get the artist to put on right. It was at about...
That's an interesting statement, John. He just said that was the only thing I could get the artist to put on right.
Yeah, well, he had said that the night of the shooting, he went down to the precinct and gave a description for a sketch.
Right. But
which is what I thought he was talking about when he was upset that he described Berkowitz and the sketch was made of
this guy,
chubby ski cap person.
Right. That's what I thought. That's what I had originally thought. Maybe he's gonna. Maybe we're both right, and maybe we just haven't gotten to that point of the tape yet. So let's carry on. But right now he's getting pissed off because he said that he's looking at this sketch and he said that the cap was the only thing that was correct on it. Which, of course, Maury Terry, we must remember, as fair, open-minded people, that Maury Terry used this sketch as the killer. Okay? He absolutely told us all that it was the chubby teenager that did the shooting and not Berkowitz. The chubby teenager in the watch cap.
There's actually another version of that.
Of this sketch?
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm going to check.
Check. This is the only one I've seen. But so right now, the guy who sat down and made this sketch is now starting to say that there's issues with this sketch. That's interesting to me. Let's carry on.
In the front, it was at about the hairline and sloping further down the back of his head, but it did not cover the ears. It was just touched the top of his ears, so it was on a slant, if you get what I mean.
Now, so then some of his hair was sticking out.
No, not really, only from the rear.
So he's saying he didn't see any hair coming out of the hat. This sketch has hair coming out all over the hat. Okay, so that's interesting.
If I could have seen the back of his head, I would have seen what was below the cap. But the cap covered the hair in front and pretty well on the sides, except perhaps for the sideburns.
And that does sound like Berkowitz. Berkowitz didn't have hair that would have had extended. His hair ended at his ears, and he had sideburns.
Right.
Right.
Sideburns were apparent, and they show up also in his picture.
Would it be possible for you to send me a photocopy of the composite that you have?
Yeah.
Okay. My address, if you have a pencil there.
Yeah, just have a second.
Okay.
Shoot.
My name is Herbert J. Leifer, Leifer.
Herbert J. like James.
Right.
Leifer.
Right. And it's the Queens District Attorney's Office. 125-01 Queens Boulevard.
Queens Boulevard.
Kew Gardens. 11415.
11415. Yeah. Now, the only thing is, if I send it in the mail, you won't get it for a week. You want me to drop it off tonight when I get home?
No,
Is there any way I can drop that off?
No, the chances are of us catching each other so that I can receive it personally are slim. I'm sure if you drop it in the mail, I'll get it before the end of the week.
Yeah, well,
put it together with
what I'll do then is I'll go home and I may drop it in the Kew Gardens post office. That'll help save rooting back and forth, yeah.
Let me ask you this. Have you ever seen David Berkowitz in person?
No, I never have.
The only time was
that one time.
Yeah, of course. Well, I understand that. That was the only time that you've seen him in person. Yep. Other than that, you've only seen him on television or pictures in the newspaper.
Well, no, I only saw the pictures in the newspaper. I'm working 60 hours a week. I don't get much chance to watch television.
Okay. What type of work do you do, sir?
I'm with an engineering firm.
I see.
Down here in New York.
I see. So that the only time was then in photographs in the newspapers.
Yeah, but it's a dead ringer for there. There are certain poses that came out in the newspaper were a dead ringer for him as he raced past me, and I recognized it right away. As a matter of fact, my description was a perfect description of the guy of Berkowitz. And I missed the age by about 3 years, but it's hard to tell when a guy's running with a, you know, when you put a tie on, it makes you look older. When you take the tie off, it makes you look younger. He didn't have a necktie on, and in the dim light, he looked about 19, 20, 21, and I understand he was about 24.
So that's interesting because Maury used the age as a major factor in saying that it wasn't Berkowitz. And here we have the eyewitness saying, I got it wrong. I mean, look, he looked young, but he was older, but I got that wrong. So that would have been interesting context to put in the book, in my opinion.
You know, this is...
Go ahead.
This is what happens when 45 years pass and we have to find out who Mr. Barlow is after he's probably long gone.
Gone.
There's no questioning him.
No.
There's no finding out, you know.
No.
It's so frustrating.
It is frustrating, but I believe, and maybe I'm just being optimistic, but I believe we can still glean the answers that we need. Maybe I'm biased, so that's just my own thing. But so far, on the play-by-play, I think Barlow comes off as mostly believable, and that the things that he gets wrong are not conspiratorial or making me worry in any way so far. Maybe how do you feel so far?
I'm totally convinced he's a great witness. If I were on a jury and he was testifying against Berkowitz, I would believe him.
Yeah, I would.
My feeling.
I would too. But, you know, maybe we're just being biased, and we should get some law enforcement to call in as well. That'd be great. Let's carry on.
What was the weather like? Was it warm or cold? I mean, March
It was not cold.
Because early March is hard to tell in New York.
Well, it was clear and dry, and it was not cold. I probably had a top coat on, but I may not have even had it buttoned up.
Did it seem unusual when he went by you to see a guy running in his shirt sleeves?
No, not in that neighborhood. Because there's an awful lot of people jog, maybe not at nighttime, but you don't necessarily question what they're doing or why they're doing it. That's a kind of a main thoroughfare, that Dartmouth Street.
I don't recall you said were sleeves up or down. Do you remember?
I wouldn't remember that one, but I'm pretty sure they were down. But I wouldn't be able to swear on that one. Again, my focus was on the curiosity of why a guy would be running with his hands on his head wearing a stocking cap, except to hold a stocking cap on, but also, of course, he could have been holding the pistol up there.
Yeah. Of course, we never know what, you never know what people are doing, what they're doing.
But if you could get Flanagan talked with him, and he told Flanagan the same story when he described me, and the point where he passed me, and he said, yes, I was wearing a stocking cap, and it was the first time, and the only time I ever wore a stocking cap. But Flanagan, I don't think, asked him why he was running with his hands on his head. That was the thing that was the curious thing, unless he was holding that pistol up there.
Let me ask you this. Now, Dartmouth Street at the point where the girl...
I saw your head turn, John. Anything?
So I'm wondering if the reason he was holding his head, if he was trying to pull the cap off and change his appearance as he's running back to the car, maybe change his shirt or pull a hat.
Or maybe he was just so paranoid and frantic, he was trying to pull it over his face to change appearance.
Pull it down, maybe.
Right,
yeah,
right.
Who runs holding their head?
Exactly. And when you do that, I mean, listen, I've never shot a person, whether point blank range or ever. But I would imagine after you do that, you're not in your right mind. You're probably going nuts. I could see a person wanting, irrationally trying to pull it over their head to try to keep them their face from being seen. So far, he seems to be describing Berkowitz to a T, and the fact that Berkowitz in his confession described him is very interesting. Now, what we have to do, John, to be totally fair and accurate, is we have to see what Mr. Barlow could have read in the newspapers and gotten as information. I did not do that research, and I think that was probably a mistake. But I do actually want to find that out. Maybe that's something for the crowd to do, to find all of the newspaper reports that Barlow could have read and see if he could have gotten any of the information that he's telling us from those newspapers. I think that that's a worthwhile thing. All right, let's carry on.
I'm wondering
Go ahead.
about where did he get the Manson thing from? I mean, that's ultimate evil was way after 1979, right?
Yeah, what did he mean by that Manson thing? That's a mystery. I tend to think that you're right, that he was talking about, maybe the cult stuff. And somebody before in the chat said that Maury's articles were actually put out in all the tri-state area papers, so he could have read that as well.
Prior to the book.
Prior to the book, correct? Because those articles by Maury came out in '79, the same year as these interviews.
Okay.
Yeah, in fact, it was those articles that was the impetus for this Queens DA investigation, John. So my assumption is that he read some of those articles. I'm only assuming. I don't know.
But the articles went into Manson and the West Coast stuff?
They did not. You're right.
I don't know. It's just, I don't know. We're going to have to do a little investigating.
Yeah, the questions that are arising just from this show. Interesting. Because, great point. The Manson stuff only came out after the publisher told him to sex the book up. And that came out in the book only. Interesting.
I'm wondering if Maury actually interviewed Barlow and spoke to him about his whole thesis, his whole theory.
That would be an interesting thing to find out. I don't see anything from Maury's notes in the Queen's DA that he did, but who knows? And we don't have all of Maury's notes, so we don't know. All right, let's carry it on.
Barlow was shot at the point where you saw him. It's a one-way street, right? Yeah. And that's one-way, I don't remember my directions now. That's one-way going toward the city.
Yes.
Okay. Did you glance after the runner?
Yeah, which way he was going?
Yeah.
He was going like hell, straight down to Dartmouth Street.
In other words, he crossed over the street.
No, he was running, he crossed over Tennis Place.
Right, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
And he continued
on Dartmouth Street, and he told Flanagan the reason he was going down there is he had his car parked on Burns Street 2 blocks away, meaning he had to go 2 blocks down Dartmouth Street and swing around and pick up his car on Burns Street.
You have to go right.
Yeah, he had to make a right turn, but he had to go around the stadium first.
And that's where he shot the foreign girl on Burns.
Well, it was really Station Square.
It's Burns right off Continental.
Yeah, whereas his car was closer to 68th Street on Burns.
Now, did you happen to notice when he was running whether any cars were pulling out or any lights on?
There wasn't a soul, there wasn't an automobile, there wasn't anything.
Nothing moved, no movement.
Nothing, no movement. I know other people have tried to convince me that there were people who were dashing here and there. No, there were not.
And you didn't hear anyone yelling this way or anything any horns?
Not a sound. There wasn't anybody. The first thing that happened was when I opened the bushes to see confirm that it was somebody lying there, I turned around and here was a dark, slender woman, about 4 feet 8, standing there trembling. She had come around the corner, and I understood later she didn't speak English, and I told her not to disturb the body. I was going to phone the police, and when I came back out, there was a young man had come along and pulled her out. For God's sakes, the one thing you don't do with a person is pull him out of the bushes, but however he did, she was dead, so it didn't matter.
No, hell no, that did matter. It mattered massively. When he pulled her out, he could have done damage to the wound. He could have opened the wound. He could have scraped her. He could have, that was massive error. You don't tamper I hate to say it, but you don't tamper with the evidence.
Definitely not a good thing to tamper with a crime scene. Especially, being what was going on with the shootings.
Right. Not that the city was on hyper alert just yet, though. We have to remember that context. Son of Sam only came out the next month. Not yet, but still, basic stuff. The last thing I would ever do was touch a dead body, and I certainly wouldn't tamper with a crime scene. Huge mistake.
but that was after the fact. It took me 45 seconds to get the 919 number, and of course I had to go back into my apartment and phone and then come out, and that's when the boy had just arrived. So that they were the only people, and then up to that point.
And then the police arrived about 45 minutes later.
Yeah, meanwhile there were 1,000 people there, including her parents and brother and sister, and they were wailing around, of course. It was rather pitiful.
It's a very difficult and sad kind of a thing.
Oh, of course it was, and there was just no reason for it, but some stupid jerk like Berkowitz pulling something like that.
Also, one other question. Did you happen to see any Volkswagens around that evening, any yellow Volkswagens, in going from your car to the area?
No, because when I came home, I went in and had a bite to eat, and then I went out and unloaded my car with all the office records and things, and then I went out and reparked it. And as I walked back, there was no traffic, no people, no traffic.
Nothing at all?
No. It's a quiet neighborhood.
I know I've been there many, many times.
Yeah.
And I'm just...
Well, I mean, it was quiet that night.
As I had mentioned you when I called when I spoke to you on Friday, what we're trying to do is piece together again for the last time, all of the information from all of the witnesses, from all of the victims, and try to put it together to see whether there's any similarity.
Yeah, well, you may find something, and more power to you if you do. I'm not counting anything out. All I'm saying is that the guy that did the job in the case that I was a witness of, that was Berkowitz, and there was nobody else.
Okay.
That doesn't mean there weren't somebody else in some of the others.
Oh, I understand.
Yeah.
I completely understand.
Sure.
All right, well, thank you very much, Mr. Barlow. I really appreciate it.
Well, if I can help you at any time, let me know, because I have an interest in this thing. And,
I understand.
yeah, and I want to be helpful. At the same time, I don't want to give you a whole bunch of BS and just confuse you, and that wouldn't help at all.
Right.
And meanwhile, I'll send you some of the pictures that I have.
Thank you very much, and have a very happy holiday.
Thank you. Same to you.
Thank you very much, sir. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So he knew about the cult because he was talking about it just there.
Yeah.
He knew about the
so
cult thesis.
Obviously he read the articles.
The articles.
And I don't know how. Yeah, book club mentioned that this guy was influenced a lot by the media, and that definitely happens. Let's be honest, that can happen. But there's also another side of that coin. When you see a face at a crime and you're locked into that face and his facial features, when Berkowitz was arrested and he saw that face in the newspaper, the other side of that coin is you could say, hey, that's the guy. I remember that face.
Right.
So I understand what book club was trying to say, but there's another side of that coin, and I think he's pretty certain about who he saw, and like I said, I personally believe him. I think he's a great witness.
Right. My personal opinion on this tape is that this is going to be one of those tapes where people just want to hear what they're going to hear, possibly including me. But having said that, I am pretty convinced that this guy's testimony, that he was spot on, that he saw Berkowitz. He said he saw no one else. He said that they sketched the guy wrong, that they didn't listen to him, that the hair was wrong in the sketch, and all sorts of things were wrong with that sketch. He described Berkowitz and so on and so forth. So again, we're going to all hear what we want to hear, but my personal opinion on this is that this was a good eyewitness, and he was describing Berkowitz. He saw Berkowitz and he saw no one else. And for me, and also that coupled with Berkowitz's description of the crimes, and also the fact that I know Maury Terry selectively edits things out like crazy, and he had 500 police reports to look at, and he only chose one other one. My spidey sensors are saying that we got lied to again about the Boscarichian case, and it was just Berkowitz. But that's just my opinion. How do you feel, John?
Yeah, like I said, if I were on a jury, Manny, and this guy was testifying against Berkowitz, I'd convict him. I believe the man is sincere. Berkowitz's lawyer would have to do a lot to convince me this guy's looking for 15 minutes of fame, he's a liar, he's a con artist, or he has a motive. He doesn't come across that way to me. He's very detailed on the stuff that he focused on stuff that he didn't pay too much attention to. His shoes, the color of his pants, were they jeans, were they dress pants? I mean, for the most part, he saw what he saw, and what he focused on was the face. And he said, in 5 different ways, Berkowitz is the guy that ran by me.
Right.
And as soon as Berkowitz ran by him, he walked up to Voskerichian and saw the murder, and he put the whole picture together in his head. I thought there were firecrackers. That guy was actually shooting her here.
Right.
And he's a perfectly good witness to me, and as far as I'm concerned, anyhow.
I think he's a pretty solid witness. I think he sounds believable. I think Book Club Warrior, who knows a thing or two about witnesses, is on the same page. But I do have to say that there's certain things that do bother me a little bit. The difference of his description between the white shirt and the dark shirt, that bothers me slightly. But then again, it could just be misremembering or that kind of stuff. The other thing is that he definitely read a lot of media reports. It's clear. If he read enough to, and he said he's interested in this. If he read enough to read Maury Terry stuff, he read a lot of media reports, and it did come up in the chat. People saying, well, his testimony could be influenced by those media reports. And I think that as a fair reporter who's trying to be fair with this, I do have to bring that up. Having said that, my opinion is that he is believable, and that Berkowitz did this alone. I see no other. And plus, who is this 16 to 18-year-old cult member that Maury was referring to? Nobody is mentioned in the Ultimate Evil at all as being 16 years old as part of this.
Yeah, well, Berkowitz had said that this shooting was done by a woman, and in the Ultimate Evil, it says Santucci, Leifer, and Maury all agree that a woman did this shooting. So
yeah, we don't know that. That's filtered by Maury. I never saw Santucci and Leifer saying that from their own mouth. I saw Maury interpret that and say it in his book, but I never saw that coming out of their own mouth.
Well, according to the book, right?
Right, exactly.
The book, their consensus was a female committed this shooting. So
right,
we can use our imagination as to who.
Exactly. So, John, we're having a little issues with the audio again. So I want to take it on out. Plus, we're at an hour and a half, and we did what we needed to do. So I just want to say thank you so much. Great show. Please, final words for the audience.
Thank you very much. Like I said, this stuff is all individual interpretation. You know, I'm not here to impose my opinion, but based on a lot of these interviews that were released, I've changed my views on the Ultimate Evil, and I think Maury got a lot of stuff right, and I'm still unsure about a couple of the shootings, but as far as I'm concerned, you know, it's for us to figure it out.
Right.
Hopefully, we'll have a year of some more great shows, and we'll sometime come to a conclusion, I hope.
Hopefully. Hey,
thanks for having me.
Hey, no problem. And you know what? We got Eric coming in, so let's get Eric. I'm sure he wants to. Let's the three of us. Let's the three of us commune. Eric,
John,
wait a second. What's going on with your hair today, Eric?
It's the fan and the heat. So I decided not to use the brush, trying to get back my Elvis pompadour from 1956.
It's funny. Actually, I have a hair announcement. Yes, it was a wig the whole time. No, I'm just kidding. I'm actually.
Asked me, do I have the video of the Berkowitz hair show? I never remember that. I can't even find it.
The Berkowitz hair show? I never heard of it, but I am finally, after a year and a half, getting a haircut tomorrow. Thank God. And I'm keeping it long. Don't worry, guys. I'm keeping the look, but I'm just shortening it a few.
Eric,
inches.
What's your verdict on Mr. Barlow?
I think he's an excellent witness, and because he's a thinker and he's detailed. As time went on, he could have also not, unintentionally adhered to what he saw that evening as an excellent witness to what in the 2 years almost past he's been reading and perhaps researching. There is that confusion, when I said play it again and everything. But this 16 to 18-year-old, I don't know if you saw, I put up in the chat, she died, what, March 8th or March 7th was she murdered?
March 8th.
Okay, 2 days later, in the New York Times, Maury Terry writes that there was a 16 or 18-year-old. That's the first time I ever knew it was that early reported.
He must have gotten that from the erroneous Barlow report.
The Barlow report?
The Barlow, because Barlow is the only one that said it was a 16 to 18-year-old.
At that time in 77.
Right. So the New York Times reporter must have gotten that from the Barlow, from Barlow.
Yes.
Amplifying erroneous information, and then Maury picks up on that and takes that to the 10th, the 10th degree.
Certainly very different. Doesn't look like Berkowitz. That thin sketch looks like a fellow who is almost emaciated.
No, to me the thin sketch. Let me get that back. To me the thin sketch looks just like Berkowitz. Hold on, Chrome tab.
You think so?
I don't have it up anymore, but to me that looks just like Berkowitz. The second, not the one in the cap, but the other one with the hair back. To me, that's a spitting image of Berkowitz.
Right.
Well,
right. Eric's talking about the one with the keycap.
Yeah. The cap and the eyes are a bit slanted, almost. But the thing is this: what about the fact he said that he saw her in a headlock, and then shot?
He thinks that, but again, he wasn't. He says that he admits he wasn't even paying attention. John.
And all the time, though, the only report that I've ever read, and I haven't gone through the 574 pages yet, is that she put her books up instinctively.
Right.
People might do, like people might go like that.
Right.
The bullet went right through the books easily.
That I have to confirm. Because I can see just 1 second, John. I can see a bullet being deflected, especially a slow and heavy bullet like a 44. I mean, a textbook is thick. Anyway, John, sorry.
Yeah, so initially he says he thinks he sees him grabbing her neck. Then he describes a headlock, and here's what he finds out was a shot. So he was 80 yards away. It was 7:30 at nighttime. I don't know how old Mr. Barlow was at the time, but
how close was he?
I mean, I could see
250
I could
feet.
see him interpreting a struggle and getting a little confused.
Okay,
right.
It's not that big of
that to me.
Feet away.
That's a long distance.
Right. And then, do you notice towards the end, he's very detailed about where the guy ran and turned to get his car. Does he see where he turned and got the car? Did he see him get the car?
That's a great point.
Was he picked up by somebody? And, I told you, Manny, that I could also believe it was Berkowitz alone. I really could. But did he see him get the car? He describes that he turned down this street and he went there and he got the car.
That's true. How did he see all that stuff, too?
He see it?
Well, what he says is, if you listen to it again, he says that he read that's where Berkowitz had his car parked.
Oh, so he just recreated it in his head. Okay, that makes sense.
Yes.
Okay.
I would do that in my neighborhood. If I read that someone was parked on, a street, I'd be like, well, you have to go there. Okay.
Because the way he narrates it, you actually think he has seen all of this actually. The killing, the running away, the escape, and so forth. Now, one last thing. Did Maury Terry write that extensively? Was he that broad spread about the cult and Charles Manson in 1979?
No. Manson didn't even come up until the book.
Yeah. You see, that's the whole point. Yeah. Of course, you never know. Some journalists, some even rookie journalists could have said, well, this is like Manson, because if you want to sell something, use Manson's name. But I'm just wondering, do we have all the articles by Maury Terry?
I actually have them from microfilm from the library that I printed in 1990, I don't know, 99 or something. But no, they're all up there. They're easily found.
Yeah, and he, do you think he actually so he did not write that extensively about the cult yet?
The only thing he said was satanic cult at Untermeyer Park linked to Son of Sam, which we know was completely false as well. It was,
to play the devil's advocate, though,
yeah.
Did they allow him to see these 574 pages?
That's a great point, and I have to say, for my own opinion, is yes, because he clearly read some of these police reports because he talked about the jogger, right? And he talked about another little girl who had seen the guy in the beige raincoat. So what we need to do is we need to look through these 574 pages and find those police reports, because if we can find them, that means he saw them as well.
Because a person jogging is very different than a person escaping running.
No. The jogger was the person who saw a guy in the the jogger was the person who saw supposedly Berkowitz, before the shooting.
Well, I trust Barlow, but I think over time, because of his enthusiasm and the effect of seeing a murder, he just subconsciously he's not delusional or seeing an illusion. He just adhered information to what had already taken place. It's like an historical narrative that continues.
Right. I can definitely get with that, but he is pretty damn sure and unequivocal that it was Berkowitz. But then again, we do have some other issues as well.
You see Berkowitz running that fast, though?
Yes, now I do. Now that I know that he rode his bike up to Coscob, Connecticut from the Bronx, and he rode up to Rye Playland and Armonk, and then he walked for miles and miles and miles. He had core strength.
Yeah, and in fact, people who could be a bit overweight or look rather muscular here, it's a core strength that makes them run very fast.
I have my own life to compare this to. When I was 12 years old, I know this is crazy, but when I was 12 years old, I made a pact with myself that every day I was going to go out and take a long walk. And for the most part, I have actually kept that up with that. And also being a New Yorker, okay, you also walk fast. I walk faster than anybody. I'm almost 50 years old, and I walk faster than teenagers on the street now. So the point is, I have that core strength built up over years. He had the same core strength. I can see Berkey moving fast. Long story short.
Yeah. Well, obviously a bear can run in less than 5 seconds an entire football field like the Meadowlands.
Good point. All right, listen.
Thank you, John. You did very well, my friend. Very, very well.
Thank you very much. Thank you,
John,
Manny, for having me.
You're very welcome. John and Eric, I'm going to take both you guys out, but please stick around and say goodbye to me off the air, please. I'll just be a minute, okay, my friends?
Okay.
All right.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Good night. All right. Well, guys, that was a great one. That was a wonderful one. It was so much fun working with John and getting Eric on there. And of course, we just all kind of listened to a tape and reasoned together. And that's what this is all about. Am I trying to tell you what happened that night? No. Do I have my opinions? Yes. And my opinion, my overall takeaway from the Barlow tape, having studied the police reports somewhat and having read his report, having read the psychiatry letters and Berkowitz's confession, and knowing how Maury Terry selectively edits things out and manipulates and lies, my opinion is that Barlow was mostly correct. Was he 100%? Hell no. But my opinion is that Barlow saw Berkowitz run past him that evening, and that's the only thing in my mind that matters. So I'm coming out of this believing that Berkowitz acted alone on Boscarichian. Okay. Now I can be convinced otherwise. Come at me with your evidence, please. Convince me with a convincing argument. But right now, I am choosing to make that decision for myself, that I'm believing Barlow in this, and that Berkowitz acted alone in the Boscarichian murder, which of course then changes the entire tenor of the case down to Berkowitz acting most likely alone. Well, again, thank you so much, guys. We got some awesome, awesome stuff coming up for you. Listen, next Monday is a very special Manny Monday. Well, the first reason why is because of our guest. We have back Tracy Dupay, the daughter of Andrew Dupay, the mailman from Wicker Street, who unfortunately committed suicide and whose story is somewhat told in The Ultimate Evil. She has sent me a dozen old photographs of her father and her sister when they were little kids, the grandparents. And we're going to look at those photos together with you guys. And then we are going to, I asked her if it was cool, and she said, absolutely. We are going to go look at the Andrew Dupay files that were in the Maury Terry files in the Queen's DA. And we're going to react in real time. We're going to read them, and we're going to have Tracy Dupay react in real time to them. So that's going to be a very, very special episode for that reason. But our second reason, and you guys may not realize this, it just dawned on me yesterday, but this is our 1-year anniversary of Manny Monday. Not Manny Monday as named Manny Monday, but it was 1 year ago, next week, August 2nd, that our first Monday show with Jason Goodman came out. And it has become in my life something that I look forward to every week. I enjoy it so much. It's become such a special part of my identity, really. And of course, you guys have been along with me for the ride, and I appreciate it. So next week, August 1st, will be the 1-year anniversary. I'll have my new haircut, and we'll be talking to Tracy Dupay. And of course, the Sunday before, we have Psychiatric Sunday with Eric Galati. And of course, the topic is how I did it. So we have a lot of great stuff coming on. Mike Lorenzo and I are working right now furiously on Moskowitz to head out there. So we got some really, really great stuff. We have not stopped. We're on overdrive. We're kicking ass, and we are taking no prisoners. We will see you guys at the next show. And you never know, a pop-up may come up before Thursday. So stay tuned to my Twitter. All right, guys. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next time.